I said this to an AI company yesterday. What if it was, I want to open a restaurant tomorrow or next month or whatever, it's 3 months from now, let's say, in Calgary, build it. And it does everything for you. I want to make it so it picks everything. And they actually said, yeah, there is an ability, because AI has the ability now to put out job postings for humans. Have you heard about this? They put job postings out for humans now to teach AI how to be more human-like. So when you look at where technology is going, can we get to that degree where you can actually tell AI, I need a restaurant in Calgary, build it. You got 3 months, done. And then next thing you know, it's up and running, it's robotics, it's got everything going, no human interference, and it's running.
Welcome to Whisking It All with your host, Angela Esposito, co-founder of Whisk.ai, a food and beverage intelligence platform. We're going to be interviewing hospitality professionals around the world to really understand how they do what they do. Welcome to another episode of Whisking It All. We're here today with Jay Ashton, hospitality and food service business coach and consultant, and the co-host of the Late Night Restaurant Show. Jay, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. So look, really, I know you have over 33 years of experience in the restaurant industry. So one of the first questions I want to ask you, which might be a loaded question, but what got you into the restaurant industry in the first place?
It's interesting, as a lot of people ask, I get a lot of those questions. Yeah. It's actually come on my 35th year too.
Oh, wow. Okay. I know, 35 years.
35. So January will be 35. So we're getting there. I guess it started with, there's a lot of things. Like, a lot of people do these things for the purpose of reward, of like financial or for their own business and stuff. So I do this for personal reasons. Is that really the restaurant or food service industry really saved me in a way. And I have a book coming out in December. It's my book plug. Nice. Coming out in December that will talk about this as well. But I grew up really in a house of chaos. It was screaming and fighting all the time. And when we were able to go to a restaurant, because those days it wasn't like it is today, where it's part of your culture, part of your lifestyle now. Then it was just really for more celebrating different
special occasions.
Yeah. Those kind of things. So when we got to go to the restaurant, typically the same one, but mostly like a restaurant on a Friday or Saturday night, it was like my safe place. It was a place to really not have people fighting and screaming at each other, and a very uncomfortable place that I really started to enjoy being in a restaurant. So, my grandpa was a rum runner with Al Capone back in the days. My grandma ran a restaurant above Al Capone's hideout in Saskatchewan. So there's some connections there, but it became really a connection because of the safety I felt from a restaurant. So we go up. I started in the restaurant industry when I was 14 years old, KFC, and kind of started there and didn't really understand the industry and what it was like at all. It was just a job.
Right.
So then we moved from there to really working with restaurants, working in pubs, cafes, running restaurants, working for large franchises. I started through, the chain that a lot of people do, the model, the journey. Yeah. And it was really until probably about 5 years ago, we found out really the reason why I like this industry so much, why I want to protect it, why I want to help it, why I want to help operators. It came back to, it was kind of my saving grace for what I was doing as a kid and going through as a kid. So I've dedicated really, I would say over the last 17, 18 years, supporting and helping restaurants really succeed and to make sure that they're around much longer as independent operators and chains and franchises and everything else, is that our industry is continuing to thrive. So it's personal. It's not because of making money off it. You get to have an amazing career in it, but it's really personal, which is kind of
That's really cool. It's funny because you mentioned especially back in the day with special occasions, which I totally agree. It was once in a while, and it was a very special occasion. You go out. And the other thing interestingly enough, and we could probably talk about this trend more generally, was at least from my upbringing, you know, when I think about my parents, they typically frequent the same place.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of alluded to that, but it was a lot of, I feel like that was a norm back then. If you like the place, you're like, that's your spot. Whereas today, it's like you can try a different restaurant every day.
It was almost, that was your spot. That was your table.
Right.
Right? You got to sit at the same booth or the table. Or it was odd if you sat somewhere else in the restaurant and go, oh, this is weird. I never sat here before, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
It's interesting to see how things have kind of evolved, and now it's more about like quantity thing. Like, I want to try every different new place and the new place, which is also, I think, a challenge when you talk about that, because sometimes you see if a new restaurant opens, especially in like the full service space, it's like they're hot when they open, and then it's like the real struggle is after the first X amount of months or the first year, when that kind of hype fades, and it's like, how do you become a sustainable business and not just the kid on the block?
Yeah, I think that model's changed a lot when you look at it. I really think when you look at today, the purpose of running a restaurant then versus now, I think is shifting a little bit. I think it's make as much money as you can out of it, opposed to back in then, it was more about a little bit different in a mindset. I think it was more about the service that you were providing to the community and the people and your passion. And I know people have passion, all that. It still exists, and there's a lot of that still there. But I think more and more today, people are chasing the mighty dollar more and more and trying to get as much as they can. And they have to in a way. But there's a different mindset when it comes to the business, the drivers of the business behind restaurants today.
100%. And I'm curious, like, on that note, again, maybe another loaded question here because it's 35 years of experience, but like, what are some notable kind of trends that you've seen, right? Like, obviously you've gone from, you've seen a lot of evolution from, pre-POS and cash only businesses, but like, what are some that maybe kind of stand out when you think of like the evolution in the restaurant space?
There has been such a change in so many areas, consumer, from operators to consumer behaviors, right? Like we're talking about. But when you look at the overall trends, and necessarily, like, it could be from, today we're talking about restaurants that have to have so many locations or revenue streams. That didn't exist. It was just like one revenue stream.
That's true.
Right? Like takeout was very odd. Like I always thought, like, takeout was very rare.
It's true.
And pizza takeout, when restaurants used to deliver their own pizzas, or you had a pizza guy, or you had a couple of pizza guys in crappy little cars. like remember those days? Like, they're gone. Or the Chinese restaurant with the Chinese food, and that had a car, and that was the guy that delivered that, and that was very rare. And I see a lot of shift in the last 34 to 35 years. Is that it's becoming more complicated than anything. And I'm worried that the complications will take away the passion because of making it actually really complicated to succeed, not only from a financial side of all the challenges that are coming into the market. It's more or less like, do you have this tool? Do you have this shiny tool? Do you have this resource? And that is becoming very problematic as well, because there's so much stuff out there. How do you keep your finger on it?
Right.
And how do you know what's changing? And then we got to deal with social media, and then we got to deal with this and that. It is mind-blowing. So when you go back, the biggest impact, I think, to our industry has been the internet. And I think if we go back before internet, because I remember those days, is before the internet was a part of our industry, of even Google and why do we need the internet, or why do I need email, or why do I need a Facebook page? All these things. Prior to that, it was a different world. It was the old advertising models, all these things that we had to do to generate people into the business. It was simplistic, right? Create good food, open Monday to Friday.
Yeah,
it was so simple, right? And it was profitable.
Yeah.
It was really profitable then too. Well, today it is like completely flipped upside down. Like, if you took someone from 1985 and put them in today and said, this is what the restaurant industry looks like, they wouldn't even know what it is. It's completely different. So
or another way to think of it is if, and I agree with you, if you would take someone, like you said, from 1985,
get them to open a restaurant today, chances are they would probably close within the first
Yeah,
year.
it would be a well, it's funny you say that because a lot of people in the that are moving into the industry that come from the 85 that haven't adapted to the new technology. Guess what? Those restaurants do close quick. I've seen them, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is crazy how much it's changed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's true what you say, and it makes me think about it because it's back then. You had one primary goal. It's like, okay, serve your guests and obviously make good food, but like that's the main thing: make good food, serve your guests, service food. You're a restaurant, that's what you do, or if you're a bar, drinks, but that's what you do. And it seems like
price wasn't even really talked about either,
right? Because the margins were there, right? And now, and I was going to say, I think that's probably, and I'm sure you have a lot of experience here too, but just thinking about like cost of goods and just labor in general, so like your prime cost, with everything going up so much, it's crazy, but you're right. It's like all of a sudden now you have like 10 channels, not just because you want more revenue, but it's like you need 10 channels. So you have on-premise and off-premise, and you have the takeout, but curbside pickup, and you have online loyalty stuff, and there's a million and one ways to sell.
I don't know, like it's almost like your operational stack, not even just your tech stack, but your operational stack is huge today.
Yeah,
you have to have multiple things going on. Like it's absolutely mind blowing, and then also to give that experience, right? Like operators, most are in the industry because they love taking care of people. They want to provide that value and that experience. Well, they can't do it if they're dealing with what's going on behind the scenes. It's mind blowing.
Right. There's so many things to think about that I think one of the things I've always noticed, and it's actually one of the inspirations behind Whisk, and the reason why we started, but it was like to give restaurants their time back to focus on the things they love. Because I always joke around, but it's very true. It's like most restaurateurs don't really know what they're getting into. I mean, once they're seasoned, they know what they're doing. But like most new restaurateurs, they don't know what they're getting themselves into, and they have the right intention. They're like, oh, I love serving guests, I love food. So, but it doesn't often translate to a successful restaurant because there's all these things they didn't realize they had to do, which might be like understanding P&Ls and labor cost models and cost of goods sold stuff and recipe cost cards and kind of these things that are not to downplay, but they're boring. But they're like super necessary. And so it's like you got this guy or girl who opens a restaurant for their, like you said, love of hospitality. And then they get sucked into like Excel sheets and very dull tasks. And it's like, this is not what they thought it would be, right?
That happens more. Well, I don't know if as much as it used to, but 5 years ago, that was becoming more and more common, right? I think today, hopefully, they're doing their homework.
Yeah.
But on that, I have seen restaurants, people buy pizza places and go, I need help how to make pizza. I don't know how to make it. Well, you just bought a pizza place. What are you talking about? I don't know how to make pizza, right? So I think there is still some of that, but hopefully they do their homework because it's tough. It's tough. And the reward, like it is tougher and tougher. And I think it's going to get tougher and tougher, is my mind.
Yeah.
And not to give your company a plug, but companies like Whisk is really going to be beneficial as they understand it. And you were on my show recently talking about this as well as Whisk. And I think what's cool about it is that, like I said, you have a heart in the industry to do what's right and what's good for the industry. A lot of companies out there are doing it to make money. Yeah. And you can start seeing, I'm actually starting to see the separation now. Companies over here trying to make money at it, and people like yourself that's got a heart in it as well. Yeah. And I honestly believe that maybe it'll mix out, but hopefully the ones that have the heart are the ones that succeed.
Yeah, I hope so too. And it's funny because literally today I was in talks with a potential new client, and there were a group, and we were talking, and he was a bit worried because he's like, what happens? I just want to understand the terms of like, what happens if I don't like it? Because he had multiple restaurants and whatnot. And he's like, because he's like, I don't know if you remember, but there was this thing called COVID. And I started laughing. Of course I remember. And he's like, a lot of my suppliers or tools I was using, they were like, hey, you're stuck into a contract. And I told them, I was like, and you want to know what we did? Which maybe was a horrible idea, business-wise, but we did it for more the long-term goal is we paused all our client subscriptions, which is very hard. It's not like we just have random money sitting around. It was like, that's our revenue. And now we paused all their subscriptions because we knew like the restaurants, at least the ones that were closed. So we kept their accounts alive, but like paused the subscriptions. Awesome. And so that's where the heart comes in. But it was, it was just a good example of where I was telling the guy, it's like, we're in it for the long run. We're in it to like really give value. We don't want someone to be using whisk because they're stuck. That's the last thing we want, is like someone's like stuck in a contract. Like that's, to me, it's almost like degrading. It's like the worst place to be. Like, oh, I'm stuck in this contract.
Well, it is. And I think I think a lot of people do that because maybe maybe it isn't the connection back to, like I always say, is put your money where your mouth is. And if it is willing to be that good, you don't need contracts. Like, I think sometimes contracts are placed in there because one may question, subconsciously maybe, of the program is just not that good, so we got to hook them in somehow, right?
That's right.
I do like that about what you guys offer, but it is honestly, I have never seen in my career is the amount of change that's happening right now. Big integration with AI, like I think that's going to change things upside down.
Yeah.
I'm even doing a talk that might be a little bit outside the norm this fall. I'm doing a keynote, and I shared it with the people yesterday that we're doing it for, and I'm doing a keynote, and it is how will AI save the industry, the restaurant industry,
Interesting.
by removing the human element. So the flaw, and this might be from me being on my show, me thinking about this.
Yeah, tell me.
But I was looking at the equation of restaurants. Like there's an equation, right? We all know that. And it's multiple facets. It's not just 1 + 1.
Yeah.
It's definitely like 1 + 1 = 5. Like it's different. But when you look at, there is an equation. So when you look at the common denominator that causes restaurants to sink, it's actually the human element. So when you look at all the flaws, no matter from menus to location selections to costing, everything else, cooking, human element. It's the human. So what if we were able to build restaurants without human interference? Open, run them. It's all coming. So then you start looking at, can AI, I said this to an AI company yesterday, what if it was, I want to open a restaurant tomorrow or next month or whatever, it's 3 months from now, let's say, in Calgary, build it. And it does everything for you. I want to make it so it picks everything. And they actually said, there is an ability, because AI has the ability now to put out job postings for humans. Have you heard about this? They put job postings out for humans now to teach AI how to be more human-like.
Oh, wow.
So when you look at where technology is going, can we get to that degree where you can actually tell AI, I need a restaurant in Calgary, build it. You got 3 months, done. And then next thing you know, it's up and running, it's robotics, it's got everything going, no human interference, and it's running. I think, I think it's, people may say, oh yeah, I never have it. I have to tell you, man, the speed of the AI is coming. Yeah. The ability, I really think, if it can hire humans, it can do that. I hate to tell you. Right. So I think when you look at that, removing that human element out of the equation might actually save our industry. Right?
That's an interesting perspective because I do see that. Like I have like two kind of sides. On one side, I think like as AI keeps advancing, I think full service restaurants, like there'll be a good chunk of them that close and don't survive. But I do think there'll be the ones that do survive will become like, will do even better in the sense that people will seek that kind of experience. Maybe. Do you think
sorry to interrupt, but do you think, you made me think here, do you think then maybe we'll circle back to those full service restaurants will just be for special occasions?
I do. That's what I was going to say. And the reason I think that is like, because when you look at the world, there's a lot of examples of just like these kind of cycles, you know what I mean? And it could be for anything. It could be as simple as like, I don't know, look at this old picture of my grandfather and he has like aviator glasses and then, it came back and, bell-bottom jeans and comes back. So a lot of trends do come back. And like another good one could be like with food, right? Like for the longest time, it was like eating on the farm was normal, right? Like that was the thing. It's like, of course, farm to table because we have a farm.
100 years ago, everything was organic too.
Exactly, right? And now it's like cycled back where it's like it's hard to get organic. So when I think of it that way, it's I do think it'll cycle back to at least a point where like people will seek full service. But I do also agree on maybe the more QSR and fast casual side.
Oh yeah,
like people are going to need this automation. And I do agree with you that to certain point, sometimes humans do complicate things. You know, the perfect example or an easy example to imagine is menus, right? A human might be like, oh yeah, but we should give them this option and this option. We know if you give people more options, there's decision fatigue, and usually makes it harder, and it makes things worse, and it makes the kitchen more complicated.
Look at the U.S. Army. 2005, they moved to AI to make decisions faster, more effective, more accurate, and takes out the emotion, the human emotion. So same kind of thing.
Yeah,
take that human emotion out of making menu decisions, and it's based on profitability, customer experience, all these different things.
Yeah,
you remove that human out of there, which causes the error. Which I like. I'm not there wanting to see this. I just think that it's crazy to think like that. Like, I think it helps us think where we're headed.
You're right.
And what we're looking at, and to understand, to kind of backpedal now to go, okay, if humans are the problem, what are we doing to make the solutions so humans don't get replaced, or humans use AI to support themselves in making those decisions?
Right.
It's not to fully. I think that saying is AI won't replace you, but people that use AI will.
Right.
So I think that's what we have to look at, and that's what I'm trying to get people to understand through AI, is that either we leverage and use it in our industry, or it could replace us completely.
Right.
It doesn't even need it, right?
Yeah. And at a more micro level, it's also going to be hard to compete, right? If you have like group X and group Y of restaurants, and one is leveraging the hell out of AI and the other one isn't, like, there's a certain point, like, obviously one is going to be profitable and growing, and the other one's probably...
You're absolutely right. And here's my theory on that. So when we look at the profitability of QSRs, because QSRs, I'm going to say within 5 to 10 years, they're probably going to be, a lot of them will be robotic models.
Yeah.
Or they will be, AI and robotics.
Yeah, maybe even less. Like when you see what's happening at some of these QSRs,
they're already
like Chipotle or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, they're already there, right? So we're getting into that. Now, my theory on this is that right now, the only area that really you can adjust to generate higher profits, limited humans. You take out the human labor, you take out the labor side, right? So then you have on your P&L, like there's talks about the no labor P&Ls. I don't know if you've heard that, like where you're removing labor completely off P&Ls, which is huge.
Minimum like 30% of your P&L.
Exactly. You're adding 30 points. So let's say you reduce your P&L, your labor by 20%.
Yeah.
Okay. Or 20%. So you're doing 10% on your labor is costing you. That's maybe buddy comes in, turns the lights on, or no one robs a blade, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you think about that.
Charges the robots. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think when you look at today, as margins get tighter, operational costs, all these costs are factoring the P&L to have that small margin at the end.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see people going, because you can't, most franchises are owned by groups, right? Or publicly traded.
Right.
Well, you can't sell in a public traded market someone that makes puny margins for too long.
Right.
Right? Like there's just nothing there. The investor models will be like, forget it. You're not going to invest. Yeah. So they need to make them more profitable. And the quickest and easiest way is remove the labor side, because food prices probably not going to, go back to what they were. We're going to see maybe some fluctuation, a couple points there and there. They may even go down 20%, whatever it is, the number, whatever it is. We may see it, but guess what? Your operational cost ain't. I don't think many leases are going to be like, sorry, I guess we're charging you too much. We're going to decrease your labor. Sorry, your operational costs are not going to, I hate to tell it, ain't going backwards. Yeah. It never has in the history of cost has things got cheaper in a sense, unless there's some new technology comes in. So I think from a profitability on QSRs for investor models, which are most of them, I think you're going to see robotics have to come in and AI have to come in to shrink the labor side. Like it's really the only area I think left.
Yeah, labor side and also the COG side. Because on the COG side, I think what can happen is like more efficient forecasting, buying the right things, maybe optimizing the menu so then you can get better deals because you're buying more of protein.
Well, dynamic will come in then too, right?
Dynamic. Right. So like, the more you could do that type of stuff, and even just like optimizing menu seems like a simple one, but it's like, I don't know, if you're not buying 10 SKUs and you're buying 5 SKUs now, you could probably negotiate a better price. And so there's a bunch of stuff that can happen there. But I agree with you on the operational or the kind of admin expenses. You're not going to do much. Where there may be, or where I think, this is just my personal thought, where I think there could be opportunities maybe on the admin expenses, like you said, leases and whatnot, could be like thinking differently. And I've seen this. I think I remember seeing this in Toronto. I can't remember the company and stuff to me, but they were basically trying to get unused spaces in restaurants, turning them into kind of co-working spots. So finding like nice restaurants. So like, I don't know if it works. I don't know if it doesn't, but like that idea, obviously I can't think of others or else I would have the idea, but things like that are interesting where I think there'll be things in the future. That's just an example, but things where maybe they can have a dual purpose for a restaurant or a...
If you go back to looking at the P&L model, if you look at the restaurant model, it hasn't been changed since it came out. Right? Like when you think about it, right? Like we rely on that one source of income in our restaurant chains. Like we buy the food, we mark it up, we sell it for the value what it is, and we sell it, blah, blah, blah. Like that model has been always the same. Yeah. And I think when you look at, like we did a show back in January of this year called the dollar, or we took the dollar store model and built it into a restaurant. So we
elaborate.
said,
what do you mean?
Well, okay, it's good stuff. Okay, so the dollar store. So the dollar stores sell things between $2 to $3, right? Whatever volume is what they're working on to generate the income that they want. Right. We said, let's do the same. Can we generate a restaurant that has that much volume at a discounted price, but look at new revenue streams? So we added in, I think, 5 new revenue streams into that restaurant, not including did we have takeout? We might have takeout. But we had 5 offsetting the cost of what we would have to charge. So we dropped the price down to a $2 to $3 meal. Wow. So we took the dollar store mentality and we actually built a model.
And did you see sales significantly increase? I imagine the prices are so low, or
we didn't build it. It was all a challenge, but it is where we could see it would work. We used AI, we used the model, we generated model examples of it. It would work. So you have to look at, and that's what I'm saying is like the one revenue stream model today. I'm sorry, those ships sailed. You need to look at multiple. And you see that today, unless you have the power to be able to purchase better or whatever the case is. Yeah. But we built it. It was incredible because you can, if you take that wiggle room, every restaurant's got wiggle room still, and tighten it up, and then add in additional revenue streams, you can have it. It works. Interesting. And then you have to get volume though.
Yes. Volume's key. And I'm curious, from your point of view, like, what are, I'm thinking about like even just, if you build a certain brand or selling merchandise, whatever, but like what are some revenue streams you could think of outside of the classic like takeout and delivery? Like what are some that come to mind for you?
Most restaurants are in prime locations, right? Yeah. And especially if you're freestanding. And honestly, I know, like I know a guy that owns a CPK location, and they actually built the wall to put up advertising on the outside of the building on the backside that's on the main highway. So advertising. So most advertising billboards like that are $20,000. So if you got 2 of those and you're charging $20,000 for advertising in a prime location, that's $40,000 more. Well, take $40,000 on a 30% food cost, whatever. That's a lot of sales.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, right? So put that into the price, right? So then you have to build. So when you're building out those additional revenue streams, you have to not just wing it. You have to have a strategic plan on those additional revenue streams. We did the same thing with like swag. Like who's selling swag? Cookbooks, books, social media. How many of them have a social channel, right? How many of them have a podcast that monetize a podcast out of their restaurants? I think a restaurant monetized podcast is a must because you can market your business through your own network. Yeah. Like it's brilliant, right? So you're making additional money through that channel. I think there's so many things that you can look outside. We looked at product placement. We looked at product integration, no different than the movies, right? How much money people pay to have everyone wearing a watch in the restaurant that's from a certain company, right? Like there's certain ways to look at it in a different lens than it is always the traditional sell food.
Yeah.
Here's what it is,
Yeah.
right? So that's what we built into a dollar store model.
That's super cool. Yeah, you got my juices flowing. I'm thinking about like clothing sponsored stuff for their uniform. Like it could be when you start thinking outside the box, like you just mentioned, it's interesting because all of a sudden, yeah, between that, advertising space, maybe uniforms, maybe sponsorships from, and even like the classic, like, menu placement stuff, like, hey, putting certain product photos, like it's interesting when you kind of push the boundaries.
Well, think, Angela, the power of a drive-through. Okay, think of the power of a drive-through. What's a drive-through time average? Probably between 2 to 3 minutes. That is a commercial locked in, usually because they put the fucking borders up. That is a commercial genius location. So I took a picture on my channels quite a while ago because I drove through one and it had advertising down the one wall of the business behind me in my drive-through, in the drive-through I was in, staring at it for like 5 minutes. Tell me how much you would pay for how many cars to go through a drive-through if you're a busy drive-through that have that advertisement down the side.
Right.
It's
interesting.
And you can. And the funny thing is, you can track all of it because it's got an ROI. You can actually build an ROI model out of that. It's got 40 cars.
It's like a better version of a billboard. Billboards,
exactly.
like they might be driving and looking at their phones. I don't know, but like if you're in a narrow driveway, you're probably looking up at some point, right? In a drive-through. I mean, that's interesting.
Like the power of a drive-through, or the power of co-branding your products on pizza boxes, on containers, all those things we forget about. So when you look at the traditional model of marketing today, we know it's kind of tired. It's kind of done. So we have to, and these companies are looking for new channels to market their products into. And that includes car companies, food companies, everything out there, clothing, right? Like, do you imagine a mini franchise that partners with Adidas, who says, all the people in our restaurant are going to have Adidas. Like, imagine like a chain, like McDonald's. Here's a McDonald's treat for you, McDonald's. Imagine McDonald's partnering with Adidas and coming out with a whole Adidas McDonald's brand because it's kind of trendy, nostalgia.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you got Adidas in there. How much Adidas would pay at McDonald's to have their products branded?
That's really cool.
Like, there's just so much money.
And why do you think we don't see more of that right now? Is it just like people are not thinking of it? Because it makes sense. It's a great idea.
I think it's this. I think we get caught up in the work, right? We get caught up in the work, and also you have to be quite innovative in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think that's the simplicity of it, is that people are busy in the work. Some people are getting out there, but a lot of people just don't have the ability to kind of maybe think outside the box in a way.
Yeah.
And trust me, it takes that. You need to work it all the time to come up with ideas like that. But I tell you, there's so much stuff out there. Coffee places. I tell you, coffee places have a million ideas of just to be able to generate extra income through coffee sales, right? Like, there's just not enough. I think when you look at the ability to build and to co-brand with companies, we know that helps better with even social media, all these different things. Right. You got two brands working together. I think we're going to see that next year. I think we'll see co-branding come back next year. Starting to see a little bit already, but I think you'll see more and more of it come back into our market. We have to. Right? And it's power, and it's untraditional co-marketing, right? Like, maybe it is a high-end brand partners with like a QSR model, and they come out. We saw that with Arby's when they did the subscription models. And we talk about subscription models. I know Court does in the US a lot. And I think subscription models for restaurants is brilliant, right? And every month they're part of a community. And part of that, Arby's did it a few years ago, and it was awesome. It was brilliant. I started looking at the subscription commerce model for restaurants. Yeah. It's freaking brilliant. It's brilliant, awesome. Right? Like, who doesn't want to subscribe and then every month you get a little gift basket, or when they pull up, they call you by name, or whatever the case is. Yeah. Like, there's ways to be innovative in this space. That's why I say there's always wiggle room. There's lots of wiggle room. Yeah.
No, thinking outside the box is super interesting. I got to ask you this now. If you this will be interesting. If you had to open a restaurant, let's say next year, 2025, where would you go? You mentioned maybe coffee.
Coffee.
Tell me more.
150,000 times over again.
Hey, tell me more. I'm sure our listeners want to hear this. Tell me.
Okay, here's
I guess margins are good. That's probably a good
here.
start.
Well, margins are great. Like, I don't know if people know this. Maybe we'll let the magic, the magic bag here. So coffee today, if people don't know this, most coffee packs that you buy to make, let's say 12 cups of an 8-ounce cup of coffee, it's usually about 12.
Okay.
10 to 12, it depends on your coffee size.
Yeah.
It costs $2. Okay?
Yeah.
$2 to make 12 cups.
Yeah.
Now, if you sell a cup for at least $4 to $5, let's say $5, because
it's costing you 20 cents, let's say.
It's costing you next to nothing to make the coffee. Now, that's why you see coffee places that have like 10 people on. Like, when you step back from businesses and understand like what you look at, look at coffee places. Obviously, something's going right. They got 10 people on all the time. It's no different than all these people come to me like, what should I open? Burgers, greasy burgers and fries is what I always say. Why? Because it worked for McDonald's. Just reinvent that space. It works for them. People love grease and they love fries and they like burgers and stuff. Like, it's that. Coffee I like because the margins are high, but no one has really disrupted it in a sense. In a sense, with a brand that comes in that can compete against Starbucks. We see some off brands, like they're trying in a sense, but they haven't really put the gears in a sense. Some have tried to Starbucks. And I think Starbucks is very clever in what they do with experiences. Calling you by name, asking you to tip the coffee, their staff, all these different things.
Yeah, their gift cards are genius.
The gift cards. I had the guy that made the app on my show, and it was brilliant. All these different things. I think they're brilliant. I just think no one's really kind of said, you know what? Let's go up against them. Let's challenge them. Let's give them a run for their money, because they're out ahead from anyone else. Like, they're just like they're way in the front. They're up there. But we know that everyone needs a little challenge, but you need to think a little bit more innovative in a sense. I think you need to be careful because I think they are bridging the high on the price points.
Yeah.
I think they're testing it. Very smart operations, but I think there's time that people come in with that model. I think we can simplify it a little bit. I think challenging the cultural mindset of Starbucks. They've got this whole almost like community culture thing going on. We all know the secret menus or what to say. We've created almost like an identity there, a cultural identity. So I think someone could come into that space and go after it. It has to be, I think you have to pull in the tech a little bit more, maybe on the technical side of it. But I would go up against them any day.
What's interesting about Starbucks is, like, I was actually thinking about this. I can't remember what I saw or read, but it just triggered something in my head, a thought where I was just like, okay, Starbucks, obviously they're doing something, right? Because massive company and so I'm not here to downplay a multi-billion-dollar company. They obviously know what they're doing. I know their gift card was genius because they were one of the first to do it. And I think like the whole idea of like having that unspent money, I forget what it is, but some crazy number, like hundreds of millions of dollars a year on their P&L come from the unspent money because it's, $5 here that I never spent and $12 here, or whatever. Brilliant. But one thing I will say is I've been thinking about how, like, they've obviously done something great culturally from like you said, because people, these trends on TikTok and the secret menu. But when you really think about it, it's like, what's so special about Starbucks? Like, nothing really. Like, you go in, they're not particularly nice places. They're like normal. Okay, coffee's not that good. It's like, it's expensive. So it's like they've built something, but I also wonder how long it'll last. And maybe a long time. But it's like, I feel like, like when you really take a step back, like, what is special? There's nothing where you're like, okay, no, it's the way they make their coffee, or it's the beans they buy. It's like,
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination for them. Yeah, it's like a recipe. Okay, so I think when you look at it, they're, I think, catering to, and I say this with the most respect because I'm one of them, but to the wannabes of a higher status within they have today. Okay, so the people that don't drive the Porsche, but drive a nice car, but don't have the Porsche, but can feel like they're driving a Porsche when they go to Starbucks.
Interesting.
Okay, so I think they cater to the general public so well that this is your time. We're going to make you feel like you drive a Porsche, or you're wealthy. because when you go into the locations, you feel a little bit of a higher status than you'd feel like.
Yeah, that's
They're
interesting.
messing in a sense with your status, and I think that's brilliant. I think it's brilliant because you go in there, you say it's like the knock on the door 3 times. What's the password?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like that status thing. Okay, well, I only know it, right? Like I know the secret. I think that's playing on that, the environment, the way that they brand stuff their own way. Like it's a club almost. Like they've created this club feeling that you feel like you're a highest status. I think in today's world, it is very difficult to have that status to feel. That's why when you even look at Starbucks food category was outpacing their coffee sales, like their food is growing, is because you can go in there and I think they're challenging the restaurants' lunch times models because you can go into Starbucks, get a fancy dancy sandwich and a fancy dancy coffee under a $20 framework, right? So that's my lunch. And because they've created this status of a higher level than a lot of coffee places, that you can go there and go, hey, I went to Starbucks, I got my coffee and my sandwich. No one goes, ooh, like it's already kind of got that brand standard, a very higher brand standard. Everyone knows. Celebrities walk around with white cups, right? Like, like there's a lot of this, in a sense, I think it's more psychology in a model that's actually making them more people go, I need to go get my Starbucks. Every day or twice a week, I'm going to go to Starbucks because that's my treat. Yeah. Because I feel like I'm a higher level of royalty. And that's, I think they play on it a lot. They call you by name for that one reason. What's your name? They call you by name. And then now they're adding that tip feature. I think the tip feature has nothing to do with actually the tip, but to make you feel like you're at that level of a restaurant. So we can charge more for those products. That's right? It's psychology is crazy around that restaurant. Now, here's the secret. So, build a coffee shop chain. Yeah. Challenge Starbucks. What's the one thing? I'll ask you back. Sure. I think you asked me a question. I'll ask just one question. What is the one thing that would flip our industry, make a franchise extremely attractive that no one has ever done before, that would change everything in the game, that we don't do when we go out to eat? Okay, so what's something that we don't do today that would make I'm going to give you a little hint. It's about money. Is it the idea of maybe like what's the word I'm looking for, a profit sharing, like the idea of like getting people to be mini owners, like cooperatives? Like co-op. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. They've been around. Okay. That's a good one. I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm trying to think. What is it? I don't know. What if we paid people to eat at our place? Okay, elaborate. What if you made money when you ate at a restaurant? I'm there. Count me in. But you know what I'm saying? Like, what if there's a way to gamify it in a model where it actually made money while you ate at the restaurant? Or you went there. How? Elaborate, because obviously this sounds amazing, but how? Okay, well, think about, is there a way that we can build a model where I go there and I made $2 today, but it is actually money. It goes into your account. I think it's possible. Based on the margins, the dollars, your marketing, because that would just nail your marketing budget in. Right. Check. Yeah. What if we paid people? They made money when they came to your restaurant. It's so different than if you play a game today, like on Nintendo or on PlayStation. What if you paid people to play games? We do. We have a lot of games now are paying people to play them. It's pretty interesting. What if we could build a model? I think you can. I'm pretty sure I've built it before, that you would pay them to eat. They actually made money, right? Think about the energy a person physically does into your business. I always say is the best thing I love about brick and mortars that I see from a brick and mortar model is you physically have a building. There's a physical. It's not like Uber or these other companies out there physically don't have buildings, right? You have a physical building. And sometimes it's against you and sometimes it's for you. Yeah. But I look at it, you've already got real estate. It's so different. Here's my theory, golf course. So let me make you think. So think about that. If you can make money, because that would change the game, right?
And just to iron out the details, so you're not saying, hey, I'm going in buying a meal and then my reward is $2. You're saying I'm going in and I made $2 after eating my meal.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to give you another idea on this. It's a little bit outside the box. Well, this one I've done before, and I've actually built the concept with a group of people. It's crazy. It's freaking. I love it. Okay, I'm going to go into golf courses. So we go to golf courses. I work with a lot of golf courses as well. So in Canada, golf courses, 6 months of the year, they're shut down.
Right.
So this is me, how I look at golf courses. Golf courses have the most prime real estate in the community usually.
Yeah.
Right? They have the most beautiful scenery, best locations, central usually, because they're not way on the boonies, rarely. Right? And what do they already have? Members. And what do they usually are? Wealthy. Okay, you got like five or six things working for you.
Yeah.
Now you're going to close your whole operation down for the winter because no one's golfing. That makes no sense. So I'm like, well, let's put dinner domes through the field, through the fairways, right? Dinner domes. And that creates an experience for your diners. It's usually dark in Canada in the winter. Put lights in there. Put a little heater. What I did with a group is we actually reinversed a presentation where they actually built this concept for me for my presentation during my presentation. And we looked at the profitability of it. It actually makes you a lot of money.
Interesting.
Right? And you can have...
I mean, they already have the kitchen and everything, right? They got their restaurant.
They have everything there. Once again, everything's there.
Yeah.
Right? So when you look, do you imagine driving past the golf course in the wintertime, snow's coming down, they have these domes that are lit up all over the fairways and the whole golf course and the trees, some animals running around. And then you get into either a horse-drawn carriage in the wintertime or a golf cart with the back seat, and they give you hot chocolate and a blanket. You drive the party out to the dome, right?
It's pretty neat,
and you bring out the food in those catering cabinets, and they have a table, and it's scenery, and it's beautiful. It's an experience. You could have 20 of these on your course, pre-sell them, sell them for $1 more than you would inside. People will pay. Now you don't need to let go your staff. You don't need to let go your chef. You don't need to close down. Now you've got a golf course winter wonderland happening on your. And you don't even need to put it on the greens. You don't even have to put it on the fair if you're worried about it. You put it tucked in the corner. There's always tons of space around.
Yeah.
Right. You only need a 20 a diameter dome, and they cost a couple $1,000 for a good dome. A little heater. Plugins usually are in the course anyways. That's how I think when you think about businesses.
Yeah, really thinking outside of the box.
Take what you have already and utilize. It's so different than thinking, can you pay people to eat? Do you imagine how long those lineups would be? Right? So it's so different. I did this other thing. I'll share one more example. Is that I remember working with a bingo place, doing bingo.
Okay.
And they came up to me and they said, Jay, we give away free coffee. I think it was 2008. And I'm like, all right, I don't know if that's a good idea anymore because the coffee price was going up. They're like, oh, we got it. We want to charge. And I said, okay, well, what about $1? They're like, oh, no. I said, what about $1 but 50% goes to charity? Well, then it was like, wow, okay. I said, yeah, why don't we give 50% to charity? You're still making 50 cents. You didn't make.
Yeah.
I think we rounded out about $80,000 that year for them.
Wow.
Yeah, just in coffee sales.
That's
right?
Awesome.
Because and no one would ever complain, and you actually did something good for the community, right? So think about this. I think when you look at pulling the status quo of what it is today, you have to really push the boundaries of how you think to really make a difference. I think the Golf Dome, we call it the Golf Dome Project. The Golf Dome Project it would be incredible. I think being able to give people money back when they ate at your place, and somehow you built it into a model that made sense based on volume.
But it would be a subset of people, right? Like, because now you'd make no money, so you'd have to have a way to figure out who or when or the first X amount of customers. Scan their card,
right? Instead of that, you saved this much. Maybe you got $3.50 back in your account today. I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, right? Like, and that's also the point is, I think in this sense, the profit. So let's say, as you be stupid busy, you just look at what it is. It's no different than some of the models when they look at loyalty programs. But loyalty programs, as we know, they work sometimes, and sometimes people don't reward themselves on the loyalty programs, and we have unused money like the Starbucks stuff.
Right.
But what if that went back and paid people?
It's
I don't
interesting.
know, just an idea.
No,
I
it's
just
an
think if
interesting
someone
one.
can figure out how to make money while they eat, you will have a gold mine restaurant.
It's interesting. No, I definitely love the concept, and I think this will be really cool for our listeners of just thinking outside the box and using the things you have. But like even going back to what you said about Adidas and McDonald's, but like even just locally, like you don't have to be a big chain, and think about these ways, or the billboards you mentioned, or the drive-through advertising, or there are so many good examples, product placement, maybe even product placement on your website or your social. We have a lot of sponsor, you can have sponsors. So I love the idea of like pushing the limits of how restaurants are thinking today, the same way someone from maybe 1985, as we said before, wouldn't believe like, oh, what, you're selling online and takeout and this, and what's this Uber thing, and what's DoorDash, and it's or what's dynamic pricing, which is a new thing. So it's like, as these things are coming up, I could definitely see how this is the next evolution, right? It's like, how do you
I think it has to.
Yeah.
I think it has to. I think the other thing, when you look at the ability to market the same way too, right, is I think the more that we embrace our competitors in the market space, so we support each other as we market our brands and support those, it's going to be a game changer as well. It's just, you have to look at, I don't know what it is. It's in a sense just really pushing the status of what it is today and saying, how can we do this differently, or what do we do different to make it better? And I think it needs to be better. But there's so much ways to look at businesses today, or marketing, or social media. Like the podcasting for restaurants, I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, you
can
imagine
set up their studio in the restaurant and just
well, they can in a booth.
Yeah.
Do it in a booth. I got my phone. I have it where I go around to different restaurants. I can do a podcast. I can actually do a live podcast in a restaurant through my systems and interview someone like I'm in the studio. But why wouldn't you do that? I know it's work, but we put energy into other crazy things in a restaurant, right? Put it into this. Now you've got a full-time network. You're interviewing your locals and guests. You're asking them to come back to your restaurant. You're advertising the QR code to your podcast in your pizza boxes or on the table while they're waiting there. Listen to us while you wait. Yeah. Talk about bring in celebrities in your community, right? Get people that never been in there, that they want a podcast channel. Everyone wants to be a rock star, right? Give them the opportunity. Talk with your chefs. Introduce new products on your show. Introduce new menu items. Yeah. New locations. Podcast is an incredible marketing machine. Yeah. 30 minutes to an hour, you have someone's attention. That's awesome. like it's nuts. So those are the things, I think, when you look at how you market your brands out. I tell you, I don't even think we've touched the ability. Like, everyone kind of gets into that trail following the goat, following the herd. Everyone gets into that and goes, everyone got to do it this way. Well, no. Sometimes I think that was one of my teachers, my football coach, he was my English coach as well, Mr. Colinas. He said, I remember this one time, and I teach this, don't go home the same way every time. Take an alley, take a back alley, take a different way. You will see so much new things. And it's so true. And I think the same thing within business. Don't do it always the same way. Take a back alley, try a different way. You'll be amazed at what you can see. And allow for those errors. Trust me, I have a lot of errors. And, but you can only get through those. I think the errors become less and less. I was thinking about this yesterday. The errors become less and less as you get better and better at innovation or creating, or that entrepreneurial mindset. I think you get better and better at it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I want to ask you, you mentioned kind of locals, celebrities. I know you're known as the Canada's restaurant guy. So I'd love to maybe just touch on that as we wrap up. Like, how has that influenced, your career and just opportunities in the industry? And then I definitely want to end off by hearing more about your book and definitely doing a plug. But first, tell me about Canada's restaurant guy. Like, how's that influenced your career and opportunities?
So, yeah, I forget who labeled that with me. I think it was a few years ago. Really, when you look at that brand in a sense, is really where I'm here to help the industry, especially in the Canadian market, is no one's really taken that by the horns and said, hey, I'm going to be the guy that looks outside the box, provides knowledge. And then like on our shows, we interview so many people, and it's a different show, I think the most, is that we try an edutainment style model. So we try to have fun and goofy stuff on our shows and then bring in the serious content of it. So Canada's Restaurant Guy is really around that model of having a little fun, not being too serious, but also being able to provide edutainment and content to be able to help our operators. And I think I think when you look at, it's like the new version of the way of providing a coach or a consultant is just having a little fun with what we do. But it's been great. It's been outstanding. It's led to being the voice for the NRA show, the National Restaurant Association show in Chicago, to being the voice for Restaurants Canada, to being able to have our show, which we have 2 new shows coming out this fall, and then a book.
Wow. And speaking of the book, tell me a bit about the book. Like what's the book about? What inspired you? What's it called? Where can people get it? Give me all the good stuff.
So it's going to be, I think Christian's going to be on Amazon. I'm going to have it everywhere in Canada. That's my goal, is that we're going to put it in Amazon. It'll be everywhere in Canada. It's called Alone in Hospitality. They're already talking about it in New York, saying this might be the new Kitchen Confidential of our era. So I'm pulling a lot of old stories. I'll tell you 2 because they're funny.
Sure.
But they're really like, so I've been putting little snippets on LinkedIn right now of kind of what's coming.
Nice.
And I have had an incredible career, but by no means has it been easy. And when you're a disruptor or a person that thinks outside the box, you feel alone. Yeah. Like you can have all this success. Even successful people feel alone.
Yeah.
And you feel alone because you're always the one that they kind of go, well, he's the crazy one, or he's the one that thinks outside the box, or my favorite, oh, he's creative, or he's artsy. Oh, yeah, like I can't handle that, right? And it's just because I have an art degree. I grew up in the art world, so I use that other side of my brain. Now I also use the business side now, and that's what works kind of nice together.
Right.
Is when I look at my book, it's called Alone in Hospitality, is really around that. It's nothing much more simple. Is being kind of that outcast, you feel alone. Right. And then I thought, well, through my journey, I've always been that alone guy. Right? I love people. I love hanging around people. I love having people on my show. But I've always felt very alone. And that's from the childhood of being that alone kid in the restaurant. Yeah. Right? In the booth, falling asleep, being secure, to growing up and being very alone. It's been a very rewarding, but definitely a hard time. And so then I'm also then bringing in stories that I had to do with myself as running restaurants. Like, what do you do when your manager, I just posted today, your manager says, or your ownership, as you manage this location, just pay the fines on Monday. They're cheaper than if we try to abide by all the rules, right? Like those things that I had to deal with, or having to, what do you do when you freeze a keg, right? There's all these different things that we do when we look at, in our industry, being a chef, we see, or being an owner or a server. Yeah. It's really weird because you think people are part of a community, which you are in a sense, but I think more and more today people are feeling alone. And we have I think it's like an epidemic almost of people feeling this aloneness model. So I want to bring everyone together within my book, being able to tell the stories, get people to relate to them, have a laugh or two, but also reflect back on what their journey is. By no means it's perfect in a sense, and this is what the journey you must take. Here's my story, and it's been mind blowing. But awesome. You don't really know it until you start doing it. Then you start bringing back those memories, going, I remember when that happened. I forgot about that story, right? So that's awesome. It's been crazy.
And so that comes out, you were saying October? December. So December comes out. Okay. And then so to wrap things up, I would love to give you a chance to just plug away. So I know people can find you as Canada's Restaurant Guy, but there's just a chance just to really just plug I know you got more than one show. You got the book. You're on LinkedIn. So we'll put it in the notes as well. But just I'd love for you to just share.
Yeah, there's so much going on. So late night restaurant show. It's on daily, Monday to Friday, everywhere.
Awesome.
We also have the first NHL restaurant show starting October 4th.
Okay.
Which is really cool. We're bringing hockey and restaurant. And on Friday, we're working on the NFL and restaurant show.
Nice.
So that's cool. So we're working on that. I know I said it's either brilliant or a train wreck. We don't know yet.
No, it's
Those
awesome.
are the risks you got to take. So we have that. And then we have the AM marketing show on Wednesdays mornings, crack of dawn. That starts. And then I'm just starting to build out Tuesday talks in correspondence with my Alone book. So this is for people that feel alone in the industry.
Okay, that's
So
cool.
we're doing Tuesday talks where it's just an audio event on LinkedIn to be able to talk to people and share their stories and stuff, just to stay connected.
Yeah, that's
We're
cool.
working on that right now, book launch. I'm also doing 2 keynotes this fall, and then I'm building out 2 courses right now, 26 classes. One on marketing and one on our industry, business side of our industry. Wow. And then I'm traveling for like every bloody little city you can think of. And it's been, so that's where you can find me. It's pretty much awesome. LinkedIn, Google, wherever else. And then the book will be launched, and we'll make sure everyone knows where that is.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Awesome.
Very exciting.
Yeah, and look, we'd love to support. So definitely, as the date approaches, happy to share it, put it in our newsletter as well at Whisk, and promote it. So keep us posted with that project.
Awesome. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Jay, thanks for joining the show. Honestly, I had such a fun convo just talking about trends, the future of the industry, thinking outside the box. I think that's the big theme in this one. And good luck with all your projects. You're quite the busy man, so good luck with all that stuff. And looking forward to the book launch.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you want to learn more about Whisk, head to whisk.ai and book a demo.